In this lesson, we'll learn how to import animation to objects that share different names. When we do plan to import our animations to objects that do have unique names, Max requires us to make a map animation file so it knows exactly how to input the animation to this new object. So in this case, what we have in this file is what we're basically trying to map from. What I'm going to go ahead and do is go to the file that we're going to be experimenting with. Okay, no animation on this ship. And what we now want to do to add animation is basically go to File, Load Animation, and let's go ahead and choose the light speed flip. This object, yes, it has the same controllers, but it doesn't have the same name. I've actually labeled it light speed. Now, if we did work with an object that had the same name, we can use these settings here to our right. Using absolute would allow us to preserve the animation with no offset, or we could use relative if we like the offset. Okay, we can load it into the active controller if we'd like, and underneath we can either replace the animation altogether or insert this animation, which would push any pre-existing animation down in time. I'm going to go ahead and click Load Motion, and if you notice, Max now gives us a warning telling us that, okay, we need to create a map file because there are no tracks that are mapped. So let's go ahead and hit yes, and here we have it, the map animation dialog. So let's understand what we're seeing here. At the top, map nodes, this basically tells Max if we like to map to objects of the same name or the closest name, and it'll do its best to try to link those object parameters together or object controllers together. Then, if we like, we can just go based off of our object hierarchy, ignoring the name. Underneath, we see controller settings if we like Max to map to controllers of the exact name or in the order that we select, or a certain type. And then here, this is where we get to filter what we'd basically see in our incoming section. This is basically the input section of our mapping. And if we'd like, we can also set the same filter settings for our current, the object that we'd like to map to. Right, and underneath this, what we see is the motion file that we've tried to import. Underneath that, we see the map file, and this basically allows us to import any map files we already had made if we've already gone through this process. We'd simply click New and navigate to it. And then we can save out our mapping file here, or save it as, which we're going to be doing. And then next to this, what we see is, again, relative and absolute. Okay, so if we'd like to import it and preserve the animation, we'd want to click absolute, which is what we're going to be using. And then we can replace any pre-existing animation if we like, or inset, and again that would push the animation down. Alright, so let's go ahead and select the right controllers we'd like to map to and from. So for the incoming, I'm going to go ahead and choose Position, the entire position controller, and I'll control-click Rotation. And then for our current object we'd like to map to, I'm going to go ahead and choose the same options. Once we're done, we're going to want to click the top arrow to basically tell Max or set it in place that we'd like to map to these two controllers. Now, we can go ahead and choose Save Mapping As. And I'll go ahead and give this a name. It helps to give it the name of the object that you are mapping to for clarity. So I'll call this Starship Flip Map and choose Save Mapping. Now we can load the animation in, so let's go ahead and make sure that it's set to absolute, and we could even use replace even though we didn't have any animation in the scene. I'll go ahead and choose load, and there we have it. So if we look closely, we'll see that our object follows the same path that the object that we have exported the animation of does. Great, so that's the process of importing animation into Max for objects that, again, do share unique names. And we saw the the benefit of working with this and how much time it can save us in our animation pipeline.